Welcome to DEMOCREPUBLIX, where we cover the real news and history that matters to we the people. We are going to cover the history of the Jacobin Revolution because we believe that this is what the New World Order is pushing around the world to control the people. The name Jacobin derives from the Jacobin convent situated near the National Assembly, where the radical Breton deputies had founded a political club at Versailles, re-established themselves after their move to Paris in October 1789. The term Jacobin is generally applied to those militant French revolutionaries who supported the draconian measures taken by the National Convention during the prolonged crisis of the period 1792 to 1794. More broadly, however, it may be applied to the dominant political tendency of the revolution from 1789 until the closure of the Jacobin Club of Paris on 12 November 1794. There were four broad phases in the life of this key political organization. The first coincided with the period of the constitutional monarchy, when the club was known as the Societies of the Friends of the Constitution. Fees were high, and membership was limited to patriotic deputies, until the club spread to the provinces. There would be 150 provincial affiliates by the end of 1790. The second phase was precipitated by the abortive flight of Louis XVI in June 1791. Prominent Jacobins joined more radical clubs in calling for Louis's forced abdication, but most of the members of the National Assembly were concerned with consolidating the state of the revolution as expressed in the new constitution, and deserted the Jacobin Club for the Feuillants, similarly named after its meeting place in a former convent. The issue of Louis's loyalty, however, was far from resolved. The outbreak of war in April 1792 made Louis's position untenable, because repeated military defeats and the defection of thousands of noble army officers further convinced public opinion that the king was in league with the enemy through the maleficent influence of the Austrian queen, Marie Antoinette. Louis was overthrown on 10 August, and the Republic proclaimed by a new, more democratic National Convention in September. Despite the considerable consensus in the convention, in the autumn and winter of 1792-1793, it tended to divide between Jacobins and their antagonists, the Girondins. In social and political terms, Jacobins such as Maximilien Robespierre, Georges Danton, Camille Desmoulins, and Jean-Paul Marat were somewhat closer to the popular movement, and the Jacobins' habit of sitting together on the upper left-hand benches in the convention quickly earned them the epithet of Mountain and an image of uncompromising republicanism, for example, over the fate of Louis XVI. In the context of the deteriorating military situation in the winter and spring of 1793, most of the uncommitted deputies in the convention swung behind the Jacobins' emergency proposals. This was the dominant third phase of the Jacobins' existence. Between March and May 1793, the convention placed executive powers in a Committee of Public Safety, with policing powers vested in a Committee of General Security, and it acted to supervise the army through deputies on mission. It passed decrees declaring émigrés civilly dead, providing for public relief, and placing controls on grain and bread prices. The central objective of the Jacobin Committee of Public Safety, to which Robespierre was elected on 27 July, was to take the emergency measures necessary to defeat internal counter-revolutionaries and the foreign armies on French soil. Only then would the implementation of the Jacobins' democratic constitution of June 1793 be possible. Jacobinism was an ideology in which the language of patriotism, sacrifice, and citizenship, the rule of virtue, was melded with the exigencies of requisitioning and conscription. It has supporters across the country. There were perhaps 6,000 Jacobin clubs and popular societies created during the Terror, although many of them were short-lived. From 1793 to 1794, the membership of these clubs came to be dominated by artisans and shopkeepers. The social content of Jacobinism during this most radical phase placed primacy on republican education, social welfare, and an equality of social rights and obligations. Above all, however, this heterogeneous group was held together by its commitment to national unity and the survival of the Republic. For the majority of the convention, however, the goal of the Terror was the attainment of peace, and economic and political controls were accepted as temporary and regrettable impositions to that end, rather than for the realization of the Jacobins' sweeping proposals to regenerate society. Once the military crisis had lessened by June, the dominant Jacobins in the Committee of Public Safety found themselves increasingly unable to appeal to the crisis as impelling a continuation of martial law. Robespierre and his associates were removed from power and executed on 9-10 Thermidor to 27-28 July 1794. Within a month, about 200 provincial Jacobin clubs had complained angrily about the unexpected repercussions against all those associated with the Jacobin dominance of the year 2. They were silenced by bitter social reaction. Active Jacobins were arrested in Paris, Jacobins in provincial towns were assassinated, and the Jacobin club itself was closed down in November. The final phase of the Jacobin tendency during the French Revolution was its afterlife, as former Jacobins sought both to avoid reprisals and to keep alive the hopes that the Republic would again become democratic and socially radical. In the South and West, up to 2,000 Jacobins were killed by White Terror gangs. The victims were often purchasers of nationalized property, and many of them were Protestants. Only sporadically, as in the national elections of 1798, was there a resurgence in support for the Jacobin project. It was rather in the militant republicanism of the 19th century that Jacobinism was to find louder echoes. Let us know what you think. Leave your comments down below. Like, share and subscribe. And check out DEMOCREPUBLIX.com for the latest in news. Until next time.
We live in a really nightmare. We live in a really nightmare.